It's the RJ Ochoa Show on 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star. What's going on in Jerry's world? What's the latest from Cowboy Camp? Find out right here, Friday mornings at 7:30 and 9:30 with the manager and editor-in-chief of Blogging the Boys, RJ Ochoa. Here's Robin Rudy.
It's R&R and RJ. Welcome back to R&R in the morning. It's time for the RJ Ochoa show. Wow. He of Blogging the Boys. Welcome on, RJ. How are you this fine morning?
It's great to be with you guys. Happy almost weekend. Happy, hopefully, the end of all this stupid heat. Happy preseason. Happy almost Labor Day. And just happy day in general. Monday, Sunday, happy days, or whatever the song is. Good times. That's not the song I was thinking of.
No?
No, I was thinking the Happy Days theme song. Sunday, Monday, Happy
I think that's
days.
what Rudy was singing.
I was singing the church song.
Oh, you were.
Yeah.
So Cowboys break camp. They do so in a rather chippy mood, getting ready to head up to Seattle. What are the position battles we should be paying attention to tomorrow night?
I think the least glamorous one is probably along the interior of the offensive line. That's probably the only spot where they still have some enormous question marks. Zach Martin is back, and that's awesome. But outside of him, behind him, you're kind of up a creek at this point in time. And so that's definitely something that I think merits watching. If you're into wide receiver 6 battles,
yes.
Because I think most people are.
I am.
Who winds up with that 6th spot? If Jalen Brooks can kind of reclaim it, if Simi Fehoko can fight him off, that's definitely something that I'll be attuned to as well. And even the kind of bottom end of the cornerback group. Kelvin Joseph hung on a little bit last week. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do that again. Thankfully, the Cowboys haven't had any real injury situations that would force, one person to make the roster or be on the PUP list or anything like that to this point. But that's where things are the diciest across the whole group.
Why are there rumblings about LVE lining up on the outside and rushing the passer? If that does happen, why is that happening? And if it does, who takes his spot if he's able to move outside, RJ?
Well, the rumblings are there because it's happening, right? Because that's they're
But I'm just saying
it.
to actually do it in a real game, like you're playing Philly, a real regular season game. But I get practice, you're trying things out, but go ahead.
Just to be clear, and I actually forgot this. He actually did it last year during the regular season.
I missed that.
Yeah, no, I did too. I had to kind of go reconnect or not even but connect those dots for the first time. So the Cowboys are probably like, y'all are freaking out when we actually have already
done this. Right.
I mean, I think the genesis for it is today's NFL is very reminiscent of, when you're in high school. It's like, who's the fastest kid? Who's the strongest kid? Like, how can we have that dude impact things the most? And so there is pretty much positionless football at this point. I mean, there is no real player on the Cowboys defense that kind of does one thing. I mean, obviously Micah Parsons does everything. DeMarcus Lawrence can kick inside. They can kick outside a lot of their edge rushers. Obviously, Leighton Van Der Esch can put his hand in the dirt. Dan Quinn was one of these pioneers at this linebacker safety hybrid that Jaron Kearse kind of plays. You see that a lot across the NFL now with a lot of teams playing 3 safeties all the time. And so it's just a matter of like, who are our 11 best dudes? What positions do they play? Who cares? Doesn't matter. We're going to find a way to wreak havoc no matter what.
RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys joining us here on R&R. Yesterday, Dak Prescott post-practice was asked if he'll be more of a game manager this year. Thoughts on a game management position with the Dallas Cowboys and whether he will be or needs to be more of a game manager?
I think people have a stigma with that, which is somewhat fair and a stereotype of like, oh, all you do is, I mean, like, I think Alex Smith is kind of like your vintage game manager.
Garoppolo.
Your bus driver.
Yeah.
Right. And that's okay. Right?
Thank you. There's nothing wrong with it.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it if you have the talent. Like, nobody needs the Justin Herbert 70-yard, travel distance throws every drive. And so Dak certainly has the capability to make some big-time plays. But I do think that we'll see that perception of Dak grow as the season goes along. I mean, one of the foundational principles to the West Coast offense, I know that these dudes had lunch at On the Border, so they want to call it the Texas Coast offense. But I mean, it's about getting the ball out quickly, and that means easy completions. That means dump offs to your running backs, to your tight ends down shallow. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Dak flirts with a career high in completion percentage this year. And it looks like, oh, well, this dude went, 23 of 27 today, but he only threw for 190 yards. Why are y'all freaking out and singing his names and praising him so much? But that's the name of the game. I mean, if generally speaking, if you have a high completion percentage and you're throwing the ball a lot, good things will kind of happen around that.
I will go back to the defensive side of things, RJ. Talk to me about Overshown. I know with this big UT country, and you talk about positionless, I feel like he's definitely one of those guys that can go from safety to linebacker to wherever he may be. Where do you see him fitting into what Dan Quinn wants to do?
Yeah, I mean, when the Cowboys drafted him, I lamented it because of the institution of supposedly higher learning that he chose for his personal life. But the kind of common thought was, oh, here's the J-Ron Curse replacement, right? Like, the J-Ron Curse entering the final year of his deal, he'll be, I mean, because he played safety. Overshown did. And so it's like, you've got that guy. And you praise that kind of thing. You're always building and looking ahead. And so while I maintain that is true and potentially true, you asked who's playing linebacker. Leighton Vander is just putting his hand in the ground. It's Overshown, and he did that last week. I mean, it's a preseason game, and nobody is going to freak out about it. But he looked great. I mean, he looked great as kind of this thumper in the middle of the defense, and so I think that's his role this year, is to just kind of be water, right? And travel, find the gaps. And
excuse me, Bruce Lee.
Look, I mean, if you're that agile and that athletic, I think you can be compared to Bruce Lee. And so, again, despite the recent, sort of educational transgressions against him, I have no problem putting DeMarvion Overshown in that company.
RJ Ochoa sitting with us for his regular pit stop on Fridays. Continuing with Dak Prescott, and part of, on this game manager thing in this new offense, he said it's important for me to understand the flow of the game as much as anything, and when to really test the risk versus reward. So I'm trying to read into what's being drummed into his head as he's learning this new offense. And was he making poor decisions, or was it poor play calling in a lot of instances last year that led to turnovers and whatever arguments we might have?
I know it's a cop-out answer, but I think it's all symbiotic. And I mean, it really is like the symbiote in Spider-Man that overtakes you and turns you into somebody that you don't even recognize in a version of yourself. And so I think, I mean, Keanu Reeves put it well. I mean, it is,
he always does,
right? Like you take one step and the harder you try to kind of fight your way out of that, the more you tend to kind of sink in. And so it's like, okay, I've got to go get that one back. And so it's like, and I think that's a mistake that a lot of young players make is, okay, dude, yeah, you threw a pick six, right? Like that's the worst possible thing that can happen. No matter what you do, even if you have that Justin Herbert 70-yard bomb on the very first play, the touchdown isn't worth double, right? Like you can't go get it back. Like it's gone. You have to accept that. You have to move on. And so I think that we are seeing that disposition from the team as a whole. As far as the clunkiness, I mean, I think aggression's a part of it, but I think that they've done their best to kind of clean up what they can on their end from a controllable aspect. And so, and I think that all kind of boils down to understanding the why. Every offensive player you all spoke with told you that they're being, drilled, or they're
right.
having the why drilled into them. They understand why each play call is happening, why different elements of play calls are happening. And it all obviously revolves around Dak Prescott. There's a great report over at Yahoo Sports a week and a half ago by Jory Epstein about how Cowboys wide receivers, every play that they are learning and installing, they understand how many, drops Dak Prescott has, because that affects your timing, right? If you're running an option route and this is a 4-step drop for Dak Prescott, the timing associated with that for him is dramatically different as opposed to, say, a 7-step drop back. And so you have to be aware of those things so that you can be conscious of, when I break in or I break out, the ball is either going to be here or not going to be here. I have this time. I don't have that time. So on a fundamental level, it seems like they're trying to get on the same page on those little things.
Well, RJ, my point here is they weren't already doing all of this. This just seems like I was telling Rudy earlier, like, duh. They weren't counting footsteps, and they didn't understand the flow of the game and 3rd and 8 and why we're calling it after, the previous play. It just seems to me that these are professionals, and they weren't doing this, and now it's kind of a radical change.
I think that the counter to that, not that I want to crap on what they're doing now, but would be maybe, Kellen Moore felt that was unnecessary. I mean,
maybe
if I was an offensive coordinator and all of a sudden I acquired Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb, I would say, you know what, CeeDee, you've got great instincts.
Go
right?
play.
Go
play.
I get you. I see where you're at. I expect that you know that. Why should I have to talk about it?
Right. So you could argue that this is a bit controlling. You could argue things like that. And, I think and hope that this is designed to be sort of a guideline, a sort of framework of how to live and where to operate within. But it's I wouldn't say the other end of the spectrum, but it's a different way to rock.
I see this as a positive while I'm asking you this, RJ. Can Jalen Tolbert be Cedric Wilson? I see it as a positive. That's not a knock.
Great.
That's not a knock.
Is it possible?
Yeah. We actually, on our roundtable show on Tuesday night, posited which receiving group was better. The 2021 Cowboys that featured Amari Cooper at the helm with a lesser version than now of CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup prior to the injury. And Cedric Wilson obviously is that fourth kind of guy. I think the alpha of CeeDee Lamb that we're seeing now between the 2 years is probably the best receiver of the 8 options. I think he's better than even Amari was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
With all due respect to Amari. Brandon Cooks elevates things, but there is such a question mark. Your question is a great one because Cedric Wilson was such a low-key, high-level contributor. And that really matters. I mean, that's why teams like the Eagles last year are so good because it feels like, man, every dude who plays a snap for these guys is playing at a high level and contributing at a high level. And so I think that's a great opportunity for Jalen Tolbert right now. There are a lot of people, on Twitter or X who think that he could potentially supplant Michael Gallup as the team's third receiver. That exists in the world of possibilities. Yeah, I mean, Jalen Tolbert right now, if you're willing to be open, is on pace for something like that. He looks the part at this point.
Agreed.
Fehoko done?
I mean,
which one?
The receiver Fehoko. Yeah,
right. He's got a really prominent Twitter or TikTok following. I don't know if this is a Ben DiNucci.
I don't think he's in radio. I don't think that's important.
Overall, but no, what I mean is like I think he's the kind of person who can parlay playing for the Cowboys into a post-football career the way Ben DiNucci has, even though he's
going to make some
football.
hats, sell some hats.
Right. So it's time is working against Simi too. He might be the better player at this moment in time, but Jalen Brooks is on year 1 of a 4-year, 7th-round rookie contract, and that matters a lot. Not that Simi's making big money, but Simi, you're about to lose team control over Simi. I mean, it's a long game all the time, and that's why Simi has beaten out some veterans in the past. And so I think Jalen Brooks has the inside track of the advantage.
What do you say to Patrick Mahomes saying we need the preseason and Mike McCarthy saying we don't? Where do you come out on it? Is it just like to each his own? Where do you come out on it?
I think it is to each their own. And I think everybody has different motivations. I think some people, I'm not pointing fingers, will take what one said and, use it as proof positive against the other line of thought. There are multiple ways to do this, right? Like
that's facts.
There are a lot of ways to go about this. And personally, I'm a little, and I can say this comfortably from my home office and not the Dallas Cowboys sideline. I'm a little motivated by fear. I mean, we've come this far. Like think about how far we have come and all the life we have lived since the Cowboys lost to the 49ers in the divisional round of the playoffs. We had to go through St. Patrick's Day and the Masters and the clock springing forward and, the Nuggets going wild in the NBA Finals and the hottest summer of all time that is still happening. And we're still not even there yet. So, I just do not want to play with that fire at this point in time. I think, Mike McCarthy said they didn't scrimmage with another team because he feels prepared. And yeah, maybe that if they don't win the Super Bowl, that comes back to bite them and you look stupid, right? It's like the team that always there's always the team that reports last across the NFL, like the training camp by a day or two, and it's like, oh, what were you doing? Why weren't you working those extra 2 days the way the Packers were? So Mike McCarthy's been at this a long time. I think he understands kind of what the best situation is for his team.
As they head back to the Star and padded practice is done, I mean, and when you get to this point, what will be the cut line? I'm watching Blogging the Boys every day to see the projected 53. Let's talk about tight end, fullback. What'll be a weird position that we will or won't see get a little bit of extra coming in that you expect?
That's a great question. In fact, the question of the day, which is an award that I'll hand out every Friday, goes to Rob Thompson.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and go home. I'm dropping the mic. It's done.
It's funny because people, you hear the term like 53-man roster projection. There aren't 53 spots available. Like I feel like people are like, oh, there's like 4 spots available that are truly up, and up for contention or something like that. And so that's one of them. At this moment, if the Cowboys only carried 3 running backs, I would be fine. Right? You've got Tony Pollard, Deuce Vaughn, and then pick one. You want Rico Dowdle, you want Malik Davis, fine. I'd rather carry that extra tight end, and maybe you want Hunter Lipke, who's a fullback, in that mix too. But you've got Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson's making the team. Luke Schoonmaker's making the team. Peyton Hendershot might be on some thin ice.
Is Stewart going to take? Is it Stewart, the fourth string, not undrafted? What's the fourth string tight end?
It's John Stevenson.
Jr. That guy can play.
Yeah, he's your receiving threat. He's the one that's kind of making this a conversation. They've kept Sean McEwen around for a little while now. He's kind of the Kellen Moore of tight ends. You're going to have to make some decisions there so that you can go long elsewhere. I think they'll only carry 2 quarterbacks. They'll have the emergency third.
Oh.
Do they want to go long along the interior of the offensive line because everybody sucks? But tight end, fullback, running back, that Cowboy back position, that's a weird spot where, like you're saying, you could see 5-6 tight ends depending on how they classify Hunter Lipke.
Dude, I can't remember, RJ. It was maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. I just, for giggles, I looked up the depth chart and I saw Mozzie is second string. Anything to that, or he's for sure starting? Or should I not pay any attention to their depth chart at all?
I would say it's probably the last thing you said. Yeah, it's the depth chart now is a procedural thing, right?
You just got to put it out. Who cares what's on there?
Yeah, it's like Taylor Swift's set list. She's gonna sing 20 more songs. You know what I mean? No matter what. And so
I just thought that was weird. I was like, wait a minute.
Well, just to, I guess, fully answer your question, the first depth chart that the Atlanta Falcons released had Bijan Robinson,
that's true,
running back on the team.
All right, enough said. We can move on. RJ, you're too good at what you do to be sharing what Rob Gronkowski thinks. Again, I know he's a 4-time champion. I get it. But Rob Gronkowski, that's what the Cowboy fans are laying their hat on these days, that Rob Gronkowski says you're going to win the Super Bowl. You rolled with that? You're better than that, RJ.
So you mentioned that I was good at what I do.
No, you're great at what you do. You're great at what you do. I shouldn't have said good.
The TikTok video has 20,000 views.
So that's what we're going off of? Views?
Well,
but that is what we're grading on.
The Instagram post has 700 likes, among them Rudy J.
I liked it.
So,
of course. I'm going to show you love, bro, whether I agree or not.
Look, we're at a time of year where, this is, look, Kate McAllister, God bless her heart, was wrong. Christmas is not the season of perpetual hope. August is the season of perpetual hope. Right now, everyone can win the Super Bowl. And if you watch that whole clip, Rob's appearance, not this Rob, that Rob, on Kay Adams' show, his line of logic was that he would pick the Cowboys in the Super Bowl because he was asked for a team he would bet on. And he was like, here's the thing, you don't want to bet on the favorites because you're not going to win a lot of money. And so his point was the Cowboys are kind of right in that sweet spot. And then he justified it. It wasn't like a Gronk, Cowboys, boom. It was hey, look, they added Brandon Cooks, who he played with. They added Stephon Gilmore, who he played with. He was like, they've been close. They've been in the playoffs the last 2 years. Like, everything Rob said was reasoned and factual, much like the man of the same name who you're talking to right now.
RJ, the NBA announced the national schedule and national TV schedule. Where you are down in the beautiful valley, do you have access to the regional sports network that carries the Spurs? Is that the way you would partake of them, or do you have to watch them on national?
Yeah, it's actually a new development. I'm not sponsored by them by any stretch, but I'm a Fubo customer and a very happy one.
Nice.
And I would say maybe March of last year was when they added the network.
Right.
And it works out great for me. They also carry AT&T Sportsnet, so I can watch the Astros. But obviously, with all they carry the Rangers broadcast. If you're a Rangers fan as well, they have their RSN as well. So yeah, I was already really pleased as a result of it. Then Wemby happened, so now I'm over the moon thrilled about that. So yeah, that's no national spotlight. In fact, I don't get to watch the TNT broadcast because that's one of the only channels
Fubo doesn't
Fubo
carry
does not have.
TNT.
Yeah.
That's strange.
Yeah, it is odd.
Fubo, pay that extra money.
It's difficult, like very few times a year. March Madness, I got to use the TNT app. Shout out to my in-laws and their DirecTV login.
That's illegal, RJ. We don't do such things.
Nope, never.
I mean, I do it at their house. Next door,
there you
like
go.
In the bedroom next door.
Using the Wi-Fi.
So,
I got you.
yeah, exactly. Same thing.
Are you going to go with your good buddy Rob and plant your flag with Deuce Vaughn as RB2?
I mean, all due respect to my favorite Rob. I mean, Rob is not alone on this mountain.
No, it's a lot. Yeah.
Like Rob is like, circa 1955. Like, guys, this McDonald's, this is pretty good food. Like, I'm thinking about buying some stock. Like,
I'm telling you,
that's kind of what this is, Rudy. Like, and that's my thing. Like on Deuce Vaughn. And I do think there's like a straw man argument happening about him. Everywhere you look, it's like, man,
X Factor.
Yeah. Well, it's like doubted for his size, and my comeback is like, who's doubting him at this point? Like, where is the doubt? Like,
I haven't heard it.
Like, yeah, there is nothing but universal praise and joy for him, which is a good thing and a great thing, and I'm very happy about it. But I mean, actually, I wouldn't say he's the RB2. I would say he's the RB1B.
Exactly.
I know those are semantics, but
no, it makes sense. I know what you mean.
He's not your like, oh, Pollard's hurt, let's give the 20 carries to Deuce. No, he has a defined role on offense. He's not a starter on your depth chart that Rudy J obsesses over, but he is somebody who is a part of your game plan as a result of his own individual skill set.
And that's just like RJ Ochoa. You got a game plan for him with that particular skill set he brings. It's always a pleasure, RJ. Have yourself a fine weekend.
I hope that you both eat a delicious baked good.
May I say that your home office is decorated. It has come together quite well.
It looks like a little humidor.
Next week, I would like a tour. I think that you should pick up the camera and show us around. I think that'd be worth a visit.
It's beautiful.
When we first had the bookshelf set up, this spot was blank, and I was constantly like, I'm going to get something. And my wife and parents were always like, it looks terrible. You need to put something there. And I would always kind of push back against that. And now, like, an old video will pop up, and I'll be like, holy crap, that looks awful. Y'all were all right. So moral of the story, your wife and your parents are always right.
Go Man City. I've changed. They just won the tournament.
Actually, flip-flopping in soccer is like a cardinal sin, Rudy. So I would be very careful after you. I mean, this is like, you can't do this. So what a fraud you are. What a shock.
Red Devils till I die. That's RJ Ochoa. We'll see you next week,
Love
man.
you, bro.
Take care of yourself.